Harrison's appearances on the show had slowed down over the last few years. He and his son Rick opened up the business in the 1980s.
I'm Rick Harrison, and this is my pawn shop. I work here with my old man and my son.
From dominating social media hashtags to disappearing without a word, the truth behind these Pawn Stars cast members will leave you speechless. For many years, America watched the Harrison family and their antique experts in awe as they engaged in ferocious battles of wits and values with their clients. But something quietly shifted. Cast members were tragically and situationally disappearing. How hard did the fans take it? Was that just the beginning of a darker turn? Join us as we discuss 10 beloved Pawn Stars members who stepped away from the spotlight. Number 10. Richard "Old Man" Harrison. Richard was more than just a founding member of the franchise. The whole show won't exist without him. Talking about legacy names, Richard stands out as that rough American dream enthusiast who never gave up his chase for wealth and some serious liquidity, even if it meant that he survived the harshest conditions enough for one to give up. Affectionately called the Old Man on the show Pawn Stars, Richard appeared on screen with a no-nonsense persona and was seldom seen interested in anything other than getting the next antique to buy and making some serious money from it. But where did this stern G.I. Joe personality come from? Richard served in the Navy for 20 years, learning the ideal of what real discipline looked like and developing a routine in the process that created the on-screen persona Pawn Stars fans got used to. After years of service in the military, the loss of his first child, and his wife's business folding up, he made the bold choice to move to Las Vegas to start a coin shop with his son, Rick. Together, they set up the Gold and Silver Coin Shop, but 8 years after their success, they opened the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop after securing their pawning license in 1989. By the early 2000s, the pawn shop had become a big deal in the American pawn space. Every kid with an old toy or an age-old timepiece in Nevada seemingly always found their way to Richard Harrison's pawn shop. He caught the History Channel's attention in 2009, which led to a debut on live television. And the rest, as they say, is history. But while fans enjoyed the chemistry on their screen between the Harrison family, from Richard's sternness and Rick's risky ventures to Big Hoss learning to be the boss, fate didn't spare Richard. The Pawn Stars patriarch died in 2018 after years of battling Parkinson's disease. As expected, news of his death hung like a dark cloud over the franchise. Although fans moved on with the show, his memories remained etched into the franchise as the foundation of its success. If fans barely recover from the death of the Old Man, what happens when they lose another Harrison? Number 9. Adam Harrison. Following Richard's death, fans mourned, but even amidst the sniffles and tears in show business, the show must go on. As expected, new episodes of the show were released, and they hit the ground running. Over the years, the show seemed to have finally healed from losing the Old Man and his skills in appraising antiques. Consequently, the spotlight shifted to Rick, with fans watching how he handles the legacy of the Old Man and which of his 3 sons would be waiting in the wings to take over from him in the future. While his son, Corey "Big Hoss," seemed the obvious choice, as he had always been on the franchise, there was another who rarely showed up on television, Adam Harrison. Adam had no love for the spotlight. He kept his distance, but he could not stay completely hidden. He is a Harrison, after all. But as much as the world pried into his life, the details remained elusive until 2024, when everything changed. Adam was reported dead on June 19, 2024. Fans, who had barely moved on from the death of Richard, broke their silence again, mourning another Harrison. The 39-year-old reportedly died of an overdose of banned substances, specifically methamphetamine and fentanyl. But as fans mourned, critics had questions. How does a 39-year-old die from substance misuse when he had family who could have gotten him help to break the addiction? Was he possibly neglected because he wasn't the heir to the franchise? However, Rick claimed that he had taken Adam through numerous facilities, hoping for a shot at rehabilitation, but it just never seemed enough. While fans had always been used to not having Adam on screen, making his passing almost easier to digest than Richard's, there was someone else whose absence struck the show like a lightning bolt. Number 8. Austin Chumlee Russell. Austin wasn't your regular pawnbroker. He wasn't necessarily a genius at appraisals like the old man, or a serious risk-taker like Rick, who would throw caution to the wind to bag a deal. He brought something else to the table. He knows about the inner dealings within the pawn shop's ecosystem, specifically because he had been in the shop before a television series was made out of it. Also, he had some serious energy that translated from the screen to the fans. He connected with the fans without a problem, and it didn't matter whether his last name was Harrison or not. He had become a fan favorite through simply being himself. While the Harrisons often butted heads and egos clashed over a bad deal or operational dispute, which might tense up the atmosphere too much for some fans, he provided the perfect foil to shatter the often tangible doom and gloom. His character was popular, and his persona infectious, which made what happened next even harder to swallow. Austin had suddenly taken a long hiatus from the show in 2016. At first, no one was certain what had happened. Hence, the controversies thickened like a fog, clouding the truth until the verified sources released a bombshell. He reportedly pled guilty to a gun possession felony charge and a misdemeanor for substance possession. As expected, the news split the fan base, leaving many unanswered questions in its wake. Has Austin been wearing a mask for all those years? Was it some propaganda to ruin his thriving career? Although Chumlee returned to the show, the plot thickens when Big Hoss claimed he might be leaving the franchise. But would he really do that to the Harrisons' legacy? Number 7. Corey Big Hoss Harrison. Corey was the typical Harrison. He was exceptionally good at market appraisals and had a knack for making really risky deals, but he pulled them off more often than not. For fans who had watched the show since its nascent stages, Corey has always been the clear heir to the franchise. Although their reason was basic, it was understandable. Big Hoss had been in the business since he could learn to speak. He had taken up every role in the firm and was especially a fan favorite, with his sense of humor and his mentality to always make a profit or break even. But there was something else that made him different. He loved a challenge, and he had no care in the world about whom he had to take down to keep his business thriving. Often, he would lay heavily into his father if he made a bad deal, with the popular Austin Healey purchase a talking point about his character, and even fight the old man tooth and nail for an operational mistake. Nothing seemed to get past him. Consequently, fans saw him as more than Rick's son, but as a leader in his own right. But what happens when that leader chooses to leave the show? The rumor had been lingering, festering like an open wound until he confirmed it on Chumlee's podcast. He deemed the show repetitive in its content and also frowned on the fact that he had to behave like a 23-year-old at the age of 41. He just wasn't having it anymore. And yet again, fans seem to have lost another Harrison. But if the pioneers of the show continue to disappear, how would fans handle losing the show's historians? Number 6. Mark Hall-Patton. While the Harrisons brought all the fun and the fire, there was always going to be a need for a pro who could provide more than that. Somebody with an encyclopedic knowledge of antiques that does not fail and could confirm their authenticity. And for Rick, That person was Mark Hall-Patton. Mark wasn't just some old guy on the streets with a nicely groomed beard. He was a museum curator who had been in the practice for decades. His first stint on the show started as early as 2009, the same year Pawn Stars made its famous debut on the History Channel. He was approached to confirm the authenticity of an old military jacket that was reportedly owned by a certain General Oscar Griswold. But aside from his great knowledge of antiques, there was something else that stood out like a sore thumb: his usual appearance. Mark loved the wide Amish hats, the red shirts, and a big gray beard, which earned him the moniker Beard of Knowledge. He had a certain pleasure in assessing the credibility of these rare antiques, but he never did it to place a monetary value on them. He had too much respect for his history and its secrets to put a price tag on it. But after spending over a decade on the show, this unmissable character rarely graced the screens as frequently as he used to anymore, leaving too many open-ended questions. Could he really be leaving? Has the show begun to lose its appeal to its biggest characters? However, it isn't just Mark that the fans began to worry about. Soon, the attention shifted to the great Murray Sawchuk. Just how long until Murray disappears from the show, too? Number 5. Murray Sawchuk. Murray came on the show with a completely different vibe. He wasn't a history buff or some guy who could haggle prices like the Harrisons, but what he lacked in Pawn Enterprise, he made up for with his colorful energy, his sense of humor, his skill as an illusionist, and that unique haircut no one can seem to stop talking about. But just how important were his skills in the grand scheme of things? In a shop like Rick's, you just never know who is walking in through the door or what they are bringing to the table. In some cases, fans had seen rare props or historical stage items, like a Blackstone vanishing bird cage, being brought on the show by customers. Who better to authenticate than one of Las Vegas's best illusionists? He was the perfect blurred lines the show didn't know that it needed, as he often blended the business side of the show with some serious entertainment, creating some diversity in how the show was perceived. Although he was a guest cast member, he just couldn't be missed. If he wasn't on set, fans noticed and often clamored to have him back. While that often worked, it didn't take long before fans noticed his reduced presence on the show. As expected, questions followed, but not many responses quelled the fans' thirst for their illusionist. While it is safe to think that the fantastic illusionist was the show's eye candy, wait till you hear of an ex-military guy who dazzled the fans with his knowledge of rare rifles and military gadgets. Number 4. Craig Gottlieb. Craig made his first appearance in the show on May 28, 2012, during the Family Feud episode. He walked into the shop with that silent confidence that was almost similar to the old man's. Whether that was because of their shared non-nonsense ideals or just a simple coincidence, no one seemed certain. But one thing was sure: Craig knows his stuff. Although he didn't have the same bullish demeanor that came from some antique dealers, he came on the show with a host of accomplishments on his back. At the time, Craig had discovered Adolf Hitler's desk set, on which the 1938 Munich Agreement was signed, Benito Mussolini's hat, and some paintings of the dictator's parents. With such a feat, he was the professional fit for the gold and silver pawn shop. But was he a stylistic fit for Pawn Stars? Rick didn't care about the stylistic fit. He brought him on anyway, and his knowledge about military intelligence, arms, and artifacts from World Wars I and II was his strongest sales point, and fans immediately fell in shock and awe of his intelligence. Similar to the Beard of Knowledge, he had a wholesome and encapsulating knowledge of his craft. But he wasn't just an antiques dealer either. He was also an accomplished writer who wrote books on war and also worked with the U.S. and foreign intelligence to penetrate terrorist cells worldwide. Fast forward a couple of years, and he was rarely appearing on the show. Some fans misinterpreted it as a result of a sickness or just something more final, like death. However, his disappearance really had more to do with his decision to focus on his own job, as the timing often clashed with the times the Pawn Stars needed him. But aside from Craig, has anyone else decided to choose themselves over Pawn Stars? Number 3. Jesse Amoroso. From Craig's dangerous battlefield of tanks, rifles, and history's greatest dictators' memorabilia, Jesse yanked the show into a much different world. Something with music, melody, and electric guitar. Jesse's expertise on string instruments has had him on the fancy list of some of the greatest stars in music entertainment, including Imagine Dragons and Carlos Santana. Just like the Harrisons, Jesse had his own vintage guitar shop, Cowtown Guitars, located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Consequently, whenever the show needed the expertise of a guitarist to appraise a product brought to his shop, Jesse was the obvious choice. Jesse had a rather comprehensive knowledge of musical instruments, especially vintage acoustic and electric guitars. It's a high-stakes business where something as simple as a serial number or the type of wood or carvings used to design a guitar determines whether it's just a random musical instrument or a high-end collectible worth thousands of dollars. Because of him, more music heads tuned into the History Channel, looking for the next big guitar he finds, watching him play, and then appraising its value. Since his first appearance on the show, he had become a fan favorite until his frequent appearances on the show drastically reduced. It wasn't long before rumors began to swirl about some chaos between Jesse and Rick. However, both men had been in the show business too long to get dragged into another PR hell. So, they neither confirmed nor denied. However, Jesse's infrequent appearances on the show have been tied to his decision to spend more time on his personal gig while trying to create something new after Cowtown Guitars folded up in 2019. But while Jesse left the music and the good vibes he once brought him, there was someone else who gave the show something completely different. Class. Who was she, and how long did she stay? Number 2. Rebecca Romney. If Rick ever had the shop in a spot where it needed the classy touch of an antique book expert, Rebecca was also the one to call. Oh, she was different. She was an expert in rare manuscripts, journals, and even rare documents that dated back to the 15th century. She was a genius with a sense of humor, and the fans loved her for it. The pawn business has always been a high-stakes endeavor, meaning that profits can be made just as quickly as losses. Rick, not wanting to run into a loss if he could avoid it, like most business owners, wanted an expert who could tell a first-edition text from a casual reprint that has been made a little bit roughened up to give it a sense of antiquity. And that's where she thrived. But as much as fans wanted to see her in action at all times, Rebecca was just too ambitious to be rooted to a spot. She knew her strengths, so she drove her ambition up a notch by becoming a published author herself, writing about book history, while also co-founding Type Punch Matrix alongside Brian Cassidy. In her pursuit of personal goals, fans have noticed her sustained hiatus from the show, with many misrepresenting it as a death or a little tiff with shop owner Rick Harrison. But not Rebecca. Even though she did not spend as much time as others on the show before the final season in 2025, fans still noticed her absence. However, she wasn't the first woman to have ever dazzled fans of the show and suddenly looked the other way, was she? Number 1. Olivia Black. Olivia Black was not a particularly major staff member in the gold and silver pawn shop, but she was superbly memorable. Back in 2012, when the show resumed its 5th season, Chumlee and Big Hoss decided to hire more staff for the night shift, and they decided on Olivia. Popularly remembered for her striking looks and Chumlee's disguised attraction to her, Olivia seemed to be on her way to fame on the show until her past came crawling and forced her out. It was the standard for big operations like the old man's shop to have a background check, and Olivia's didn't do her much good. Although the pictures that were found of her days as a model for an adult website called Suicide Girls weren't as distasteful as today's more loosely defined examples, in 2012, it was a career-ending pose. She was thrown out on December 9, 2012, from the show, ending her short stint as a pawnbroker. Whether family, friend, or expert, the show has remained built on trust and loyalty, making every death or disappearance equally devastating to fans of the franchise. How impactful were these deaths and disappearances on the show? Will the show ever return for a new season? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.